Well, hello and good afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you happen to be catching this stream. Today's topic that we're going to talk about are some of the things that have been really plaguing the Black community in America. But the sad part is that the majority of us don't seem to see the correlation between what I will outline right now and the reality of what's going on for Black America in the United States. Right now, we have Congress really pushing to sort of bring all of the immigrants in. And I want to take a look at the story that was written here by T. Willard Thayer. And the story comes from the Philadelphia Tribune. It speaks about immigration that comes at a devastating cost to Black Americans. This, to me, is something that I've always thought to myself, and I've spoken about it to many of my family family members and friends. And I want to read this story to you, as well as two other stories that'll sort of be the culmination of where we're headed on this live stream. I want to welcome everybody, and I want to, before we get started, to please ask you to please hit the like button, hit the subscribe if this is something that you're interested in. And if you have the ability on your YouTube channel to share with others, please share this, because I believe this information will be pretty good for everybody. Now, the story starts by, again, the story will be narrated by me, and it's from T. Willard Thayer, and the date was March 11th of 2022. It starts with Congress continues to relentlessly push immigration policies that will make Black Americans poorer. That's not their stated goal, of course, the author says, but that'll nevertheless be the end result of their proposal to amnesty or to give amnesty of illegal immigrations, okay? And the boost of the level of legal immigration. So basically what they're saying is, by giving amnesty to everybody who came here illegally, it will undoubtedly hurt all of America, but the majority of the people that it will hurt will definitely be Black Americans. And I have to tell you, that is absolutely the truth. Why do I feel that way? Well, I feel that way specifically because whenever I look at my life, and I look back at everything that ever happened from childhood all the way up. When we lived in certain communities, there was a lot of Hispanic people, especially when I grew up in California, and that's just the way that it was there. But as I grew older, I began to put the pieces together, and I said, gee whiz, it seems like everywhere we are, they come and they sort of dominate. And I think the purpose for that is because there are several jobs that they can do that we have done. Unfortunately, for most of us, a lot of African American, Black, whatever we're calling ourselves today, have not the education that they will have maybe wanted, or maybe they started off in a job and, they got comfortable there and maybe they didn't finish their education. But whatever the reason, I've noticed that a lot of Hispanics come into Black communities and sort of blend in. And I also believe that it's because of the fact that a lot of Black people have always had this Black and brown mentality. They always say, oh, the Black and brown community. But unfortunately, they have their own community to go to, and they don't see us the way that we see them. Again, I'm speaking from experiences that I've seen. The rest of the story goes on to say, don't listen to those who say we supporters of immigration reduction want to put an end to it, or that we're anti-immigrant. They're only trying to shut down the debate. For decades, I have worked to help welcome and assimilate immigrants in Miami, a city with one of the largest foreign-born populations in the United States, the author says. Well, they continue with, I've also tried to convince our Black leaders that our immigration policy needs to be primarily focused on the well-being of those of us already here. And that is a big problem in the community, because we sort of have adopted this mindset that says, well, they're only coming here to get a better life. And I would like a better life. And so I would want people to be forgiving of me in this circumstance. The only problem with that narrative is, again, they have a place that they're named after that they can go home to. We don't have that. If things don't go our way, we are either pushed if things don't go the way that they should to make sure that we're taken care of, we're pushed in the recesses, we're pushed way out. We don't have the community, we don't have the financial wherewithal as most immigrants do. You look at the Koreans, you look at the Hispanics, you look at everybody that comes here from someplace else that has a quote unquote name. They have somewhere to go to, and they have a community right here in the United States that they've sort of established and sort of gleaned and gotten close together. Even in the African communities, where there's been a lot of people who have come from different countries in Africa to the United States, they have that same mindset of what I'm talking about right now, where they all get together, they all sort of, hang out together and create their own. I've seen it time and time again, but the person who is born on this soil, the Black American, does not have that opportunity. So the author goes on to say, I've also tried to convince our Black leaders that our immigration policy needs to be primarily focused on the well-being of those of us already here, those of us they supposedly represent and whose vote they rely on to stay in office, but we don't make them accountable of that vote. So it says, by many measures, the economic gap between Black and white workers has gotten worse in recent years. And in 1970, for instance, the author says that Black men earned 59% as much as white men. And by 2019, that figure had dipped to 56%. For decades, unemployment rates among Black Americans have consistently been about double for those as white Americans. There is no single explanation for these racial disparities, of course, the author says, but decades of mass immigration have almost certainly made the problem worse. Consider the years of 1940 to 1980, a period of comparatively lower immigration that generally led to tight labor markets. As immigration policy expert Roy Beck points out in his new book, Back of the Hiring Line, Black men saw their real incomes increase fourfold during those decades. Black men's earnings actually rose faster than white men's. And I'm going to tell you that in these particular years, in the 80s, I will tell you, my father was and is an engineer, made massive amounts of money, owned his own company while working with other companies, because a lot of the aerospace companies that he worked in, a lot of those would sometimes lose major contracts. And so he would end up having to go out and get consultation work, where he'd be a consultant or he would take on clients that still needed things done. And so I know that in the 80s, a lot of my family, a lot of my friends, the men in the family were making a great deal of money, and they were very comparable to everyone else, which kept everybody, competitive and not having to lean on anyone. None of us, my dad we didn't have that. We didn't lean, we did what we were supposed to do. But it does go on to say that Black men saw their incomes increase fourfold during those decades. Black men's earnings actually rose faster than white men's. White men is what it's supposed to say. During that same time period, the share of Black Americans who were considered, quote, middle class exploded, growing from 22 to 71%. Again, I lived it, and I do know that happened. The story continues with, had these trends continued, it's hard to imagine racial disparities in earnings and employment persisting for much longer. Certainly not to the degree that we see today, but progress among Black workers leveled off starting around the 70s. 5 years after Congress passed laws that significantly increased rates of immigration from roughly 250,000 per year in the middle of the 20th century to over 1 million annually today. Whereas immigrants accounted for just 4.7% of the population in 1970, they're now over 13.7, and that's just the ones that they can count. Okay, an almost threefold increase. Many immigrants are indeed hard-working and law-abiding, but the sheer number of newcomers into the United States labor market after year has created a new economic barrier for low-skilled American workers, and especially the Black workers. So we're not saying all workers. We're not saying just Black workers. We're saying all workers, but especially the Black worker. Okay. It says here, indeed, the supply of less educated labor increased due to immigration. Competition for jobs requiring a high school diploma or a high school degree or less became much greater, and Black Americans suffered disproportionately. In a 2006 paper published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, estimates that the influx in immigration between 1980 and 2000 reduced the wage of Black high school dropouts by 8.3%, reduced the employment rate by 7.4 percentage points, and increased the incarceration rate by 1.7 percentage points. Folks on the left used to find this disparate impact disturbing, and President Bill Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors plainly warned that immigration had increased. It says, quote, has increased the relative supply of less educated labor and appears to have contributed to increasing inequity of income. But many of them either no longer realize that immigration has a negative consequence or no longer care. Many Black lawmakers in Congress are working to grant amnesty now to over 6 million illegal aliens, a number that would likely be much higher, a move that would immediately increase the labor market competition and encourage more people to come here illegally in the hopes of future amnesties. Black lawmakers are also want to increase the number of green cards available for illegal immigrants, and I don't understand it. It's like, I don't get it. But the Congressional Black Caucus has endorsed amnesty and increase in annual immigration. Why? The CBC has put forward no reasonable explanation at all. Its members haven't made a case for how increasing immigration will benefit Black Americans. As my friend, the author of the story says, as my friend Roy Beck told me, economic history demonstrates that every time immigration levels have risen significantly, inequality has grown as well. The reverse is also true. So ask yourself, why are so many Black politicians in D.C. intent on increasing immigration, yet so admittedly opposed to even having the debate about reducing it? It's undeniable that mass immigration has come at a substantial cost to Black Americans. That doesn't mean that immigrants don't deserve our compassion or that immigration is the sole cause of our racial disparities in our nation. It simply means that if we want to create a fairer economy, we can no longer ignore immigration's unique contribution to racial inequality. Again, this story is written by T. Willard Fair, and he is the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Miami Incorporated. And so I want to say that I agree 110% with everything that he said. There's just a few pieces that I think could be tweaked, obviously, from a woman's standpoint, a Black woman especially, because it really does put more weight on us when the man has to go into an environment that he normally could have dominated, but now his one job can be done by, 3 other cats that don't need to make the amount of money that he needs to take care of his home, generally. And with the increase right now of housing and the increase of gas and everything else, this is going to cause a grave domino effect. But here's what I believe. I believe that as he put it there, dealing specifically with the Black Caucus and whatnot, the issue for them is that they really don't care about what goes on with us. They never have. They've been easily purchased, very, very easily purchased. Okay. And so what we see now is their purchase ability. Now, the next story that I want to go into is dealing pretty much and laying the foundation of how we sort of lay down and take it. We never, ever take up for ourselves. We just sort of lay down and take it. Or those that we thought we sent to protect us, they sort of lay down and take it as well. Did you know that there were immigrants that are coming from, I'm going to do this story first, and then I'm going to take you to what I would consider the cherry on the top of the sundae. Okay, because we all know right now that there are going to be 100,000. And when they say 100,000, it's generally a little bit more. But 100,000 immigrants are going to be coming right here to the United States. And when they come, they are coming and they're going to blend in where they can fit in. And I guarantee you that's going to be right in our neck of the woods. So I want to share this story with you. And it is dealing specifically with the 100,000 Ukrainians that are allegedly fleeing. And I say allegedly because what I have found is that I think it's a little bit more orchestrated. Okay, I think it's a lot more orchestrated than anybody is letting on to. I do. So let's get into this right now. Okay, let's get into this story. All right, so this story here talks about Brussels. It's from Brussels, Washington, March 24th. It's from Reuters. The United States plans to accept up to 100,000 Ukrainians fleeing Russia's invasion and pledging $1 billion in new humanitarian aid, the Biden administration said on Thursday after a month of bombardment touched off Europe's fastest moving refugee crisis since the end of World War II. The announcement coincided with President Joe Biden's meeting with the European leader in Brussels to coordinate the Western response to the crisis. Okay? More than 3.5 million people have fled since Russia invaded Ukraine on February the 24th, putting a strain on the neighboring European countries receiving them. The United States lawmakers and advocates have urged the Biden administration to do more to help those seeking refuge in the United States. A senior Biden official said the administration has expected many Ukrainians to choose to remain in Europe, to close their home country, but added that the United States' commitment to receive more people would relieve some pressure on the European nations currently hosting refugees. Never mind the fact that our rents have more than doubled. I spoke to one of my former employees, I think it was about 2 days ago. You know, it was good to see her. She and her son, she's a single mom. She wasn't making a lot of money while I was, human resources director of this company she worked for us in. She wasn't making a whole boatload of money, but she was very good with her money. And I think at the time, her 2-bedroom in this small neighborhood that she was living in Alabama had been for the past 4 years about $580. So maybe when she got in there, it was, a little bit less, and they had just did the increments every time after. But the deal is that this poor gal said that at the close of her lease just recently, this last time, they went from the $500 for the 2-bedroom, okay, with no new carpet, no new paint, no new windows, all the things that she said that she had needed to be repaired. They went from the $500 and some odd dollars to close to $1,400 a month. Mind you, she's been working for the same company for the past few years, and her income has not increased. Where is that other money going to come from? But if you add more people into the areas where you do have more black and brown people, because somebody coming from another country would have to start out, right? They'd have to get their baby legs under them. They couldn't just start out in the Beverly Hills of the world, or, in the Brentwood of the world, or, even the New York, expensive neighborhoods. So they would have to go into communities that look more like where they are financially at the moment, unless the government is giving them a large stipend to come in, and we don't know that. But just using the example of them coming into the black communities or into the Hispanic communities that are legally here, or the poorer white communities that are here, these are American citizens who are now going to have to compete with somebody else. Now, the plot is, there is a plot twist here, and the next story is going to shed a little light on why I'm building this the way that I am. But they did go on to say that we recognize, quote, we recognize that some number of Ukrainians who have fled may wish to come to the United States temporarily, they say, the official told reporters on the condition of anonymity. The Biden administration said in a statement that it would use the full range of legal pathways to bring Ukrainians to the United States, including the United States Refugee Resettlement Program. I believe that America goes into a lot of places and destabilizes it, or they like to utilize bad situations to pull more people into America. agenda, especially over the last couple of years, because this is what is needed in order for them to push the narrative of a specific type of voting right. And that's what I believe this is. Not only are they changing the very, foundation of the United States, they're changing the face of the United States. They've already taken down all of our monuments, so it is a clean slate. But I need you to be very cognizant of the people that are coming in, be cognizant of their religion, be cognizant of their belief system, be cognizant of everything about them. Why? Because you can't look at people and separate those things out. Though you can't just say it's a person. No, it's not just a person. That person brings history with them. And it's very, very important that you know the history and the belief system of the folks that are coming here. Everybody has been concerned about Noahide laws, and everybody has been concerned about, Sharia law and all that. But if you look at what's going on right now, I guarantee you that we're going to have to make some concessions, because the current administration is going to make sure that we make those. Whether they do it by hook or crook, it's going to happen. Now, as a part of the effort for the Ukrainians, Ukrainians may enter through existing visa avenues and through a relief program known as the humanitarian parole. You see, they're already giving these people a hand up. You can't even vet these individuals. We weren't able to vet the over 200,000 that came in from Afghanistan last year. We were not able to vet the ones that they flew in overnight from Haiti. We were not. And then they blended out and took them out into different parts of the United States under cover of night. Okay, we weren't able to vet any of those individuals. And as you know, crime has gone up an amazing amount. And these are not just standard crime. These are off the chain type things that are happening. So they said, as a part of every effort, Ukrainians may enter through the existing visa avenues and through the relief program known as the humanitarian parole, which allows people into the country on an emergency basis. Well, everything's been an emergency. We've had an emergency over the last 2 years. The senior administration official said Reuters reported details of their plans this week. And it's called here burden sharing. Before the crisis erupted in Ukraine, Biden launched the largest U.S. settlement effort since the Vietnam War by accepting 80,000 Afghans after U.S. troops left Afghanistan following 20 years of war. The contrast to the Afghan evacuation, however, the 100,000 Ukrainians would not necessarily be allowed into the United States within the current fiscal year. That's not true, which stretches until the end of September, the official said. So if we were to use that math, then that means that for all Americans who have the Christmas stuff, they're coming in around the holidays. Okay? All right. In the first 2 weeks of March, 7 Ukrainian refugees settled in the United States. Internal U.S. State Department data seen by Reuters shows as the war intensifies, the number of Ukrainians fleeing skyrocketed and more. Okay. Eastern European countries, most notably Poland, have received the bulk of the people escaping the Russian shelling of cities and towns across the Ukraine. And that's fine. They should. They have the same everything there. Their culture is the same. That's where they should be. I think a lot of these stories have been fabricated so that it could continue to destroy us. The story goes on to say that those countries want additional nations to help take in refugees, with the European Union set to discuss fair burden sharing, and the United States has allocated billions of dollars in economic aid to fleeing countries, Ukrainians and countries hosting them. Why? Because it's an agenda to wipe this nation out of its original people. The current effort, the story continues, to allow more Ukrainians into the United States is a part of a broader series of aid measures announced by the Biden administration on Thursday, including $1 billion in new funding toward humanitarian assistance to support people still in Ukraine and those affected by the global impacts of Russia's war, which Russia calls a special military operation. The Biden administration will launch a new democracy and human rights program that aims to provide at least $320 million in new funding to defend human rights in Ukraine and neighboring countries. That's not even a NATO country, and that's what we're doing. Well, it may be NATO after they're done with this meeting, who knows? The program will document and preserve evidence of potential war crimes being committed in Ukraine. Wow, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? The administration said, as a part of a broader push to hold Russia accountable for its actions. The United States wants to ensure that women and children, LGBTQ individuals, and other potential vulnerable groups have access to food, clean water, shelter, medical care, and the Biden administration says, but wasn't there just a big scuttlebutt about more people who look like this? And I'm harping on this because people who look like me, who keep voting the way that they're voting, needs to see what I'm saying so that you get some understanding of where we are headed. If you don't get your head out of the sand and wake up and smell the coffee and see what's really going on. We've been used over and over and over and over again to soften up the ground for the things that are going on. Okay? And so we're allowing ourselves to be used. We're allowing ourselves to be shaded out. We're allowing ourselves to be whited out, okay, blended in and everything else. And it is our fault. And we do need to wake up because our actions literally harm everybody else, just as everybody else's actions harm all of us. But they are using Black people in disproportionate numbers to push agendas that do things that are harmful to the Black community that has no standing at all. The term Black itself, by itself, has no standing in law or anywhere else. But we are constantly using the narratives that they give us in our communities and reverberating and just repeating and repeating and repeating and saying, yeah, let everybody come on, let them come. Stupid, where are you going to go? The leaders within the community of people who are shaded brown that look like me are constantly selling out for whatever the reason. And I don't think that it's a good thing at all. At all. Now, where does that take me? To Hampton University offering free room and board and tuition to over 50 students in Ukraine. The number is not going to be 50. If you tell me 50 and I don't bark, then you're going to let in 300. If you tell me 50 and I don't say one word, well, what's 50 to 1,000? Send 1,000. So you're letting them come here at an HBCU, a historically Black college and university. You're bringing them in, and this is possibly just the tipping of the iceberg, which means that there are probably a lot more presidents of HBCUs who've agreed to do this garbage. Your kids that look like us, that try to go to school, you have to pay out the wazoo. Yes, you do. You have to pay out of the wazoo, but Hampton University has decided to extend an olive branch to people. Okay, let's get into this. Hampton University is offering free room and board and tuition to Ukrainian and international students. What you need to understand is it's not just going to be the Ukrainian, and what we have seen on some of the other channels is that they're bringing people in that are not even from Ukraine. They have nothing to do with Ukraine. There was literally a Black woman from an African country who had an ID of a white woman, and she was telling people that this was her. And they were saying, so this is you. Since when? Last year, 5 years? No, last month. And she sat there with a straight face, and they had to let her in. Then there was a family that was trying to help a man or somebody that came in. They thought it was a student, and it was a big old man. And I mean, he was old. And it's right here on this platform where you can actually go and look for it and see it. So what is my point? They are literally bringing in people that are saying, yeah, I want to come because they don't care. And there should be some impeachment conversations going on. And I have not heard that yet. We need to have somebody impeached. This is just getting ridiculous. But what's happening at Hampton University is not just happening at Hampton University. I guarantee you that there are going to be a lot of looky-loos who want to be copycats and do the same thing. But it says that the university president, William Harvey, made the announcement Wednesday evening saying 50 to 100 students, currently in Ukraine can continue their education free of charge. Why? Couldn't you think of 50 disparaged black kids, since this is a historically black university? Couldn't you have combed through Mississippi, or combed through Georgia, or, combed through Arkansas, or combed through anywhere else and found 50 students who were disparaged but had exceptional grades, but could not even afford to think about going to an HBCU, let alone any other college? I'll hold. So it says that they are going to take 50 to 100 students currently in Ukraine, and they can continue their education free of charge at Hampton this summer. Quote, the collective Hampton University staff and students are heartbroken because of the war-torn country of Ukraine, and how they must deal with the atrocities. I definitely guarantee you there ain't one black kid at that school that wake up and say, oh my God, I wonder how they're doing. I guarantee you that it ain't happening. Like the bombing of the maternity wards, what do they care? Hospitals and other civilian areas, they always lead with children and women. They always lead with children and women. Says Hampton's University president, Dr. William R. Harvey. He says, quote, I think this partnership is something that can be beneficial to a great number of students and families. My entire career has been focused to sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. Has been focused on helping people to achieve and meet their goals. Really? Then why haven't you sought out black kids that sought out black children that from historically black university? Why haven't you sought out black children to fill those spaces if you had them? I went on their website, and they were giving warnings to students, that if they didn't have their $400 and some odd dollars, I think it was either $400 even by the 5th, that they were not going to be able to go to summer. There are no exceptions, but you're giving exceptions to people who are undoubtedly going to rub you out. Now, this particular campus does have a engineering division. I guarantee you there's going to be engineering students, because they want those people here being the engineers of what's going to happen here in the next few years. I told you guys about the Noahide law situation that everybody's concerned about. I told you guys about the fact that the Sharia law is something that everybody's concerned about, that you should watch it. You should watch it because when they bring these individuals over here, they're not going to be saying hallelujah. Let's continue. It says that his entire life has been focused on helping people achieve their goals and meet their goals. Achieve and meet their goals. The students would have an option to stay, at Hampton University for regular tuition and fees once the summer semester is over. Once the summer semester is over. Now, this story came from NBC 12 on your side. Okay. And the link will be down below in the description. But I'm about to close this up right here. And I just want to say that Black America will be no more very soon. The civil rights movement will not be about you and me. The civil rights movement will be about alphabet soup. You will be rubbed out, because the goal is to have you look the shade of a very pale brown skin bag. I'm going to show you this picture before we get out of here. Hopefully I'll see it. I hope that I'll see it here. 2050. 2050. I want you to know what they expect us to look like, because on every commercial, they're showing you what they want you to look like by blending and mixing and doing everything. And hey, I know some people may have a bad problem with it, but I'm just going to be honest with you. That is what the purpose is. Exactly what you see right here. That is the purpose. To have everybody look like this. To have everybody look like that. Because of the one world that they're talking about right now. Okay? All right? This is how the average American will look in 2050. The average American will look like this in 2050. That's the goal. To have everybody looking like what they did to Brazil. Because they took millions of Spaniards through there. And the United States paid for that, by the way. To go through and do it. This all goes against what the word says. Every single inch of it. I know a lot of people are going to be unhappy because I said that, but it does. A lot of this goes against what the word says. You're not supposed to mix all this stuff together like this and come up with this soup. But then again, that's just me. That's just the way I see it. That's my interpretation, and that's how I read it. I'm not saying don't love everybody. What I'm saying is you're not supposed to love everybody. All right. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me for the last half hour or so. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in and being so supportive to the Lockhart Perspective, Headlines with a Voice, and TLP, Headlines with a Voice. Please, 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 we are really trying to build the numbers here. If you don't mind and you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you are somebody who has the ability to share on YouTube, please share it. Share it on your Twitter page. Share it anywhere you can, because this is pretty good information that I think that a lot of people need to hear. Listen, I want you guys to remember what we always say on the Felicia Lockhart Group publications, and that is that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High Yah. You guys take care of yourselves. First of all, like we always say, take care of you. And then I want you to make sure that you take care of one another. Until we see each other again, please continue to be blessed.
Lockhart Perspective.